What's up, everybody? It's Izzy. I'm sure, like many of you, I'm fresh off of watching some of the amazing feats of strength at Raw Nationals. The 83 kilo men's primetime session was absolutely nuts. Seeing Russell Orhe squat 300.5 kilos, which I believe is 663 pounds, like it was a joke. And then Yu Ren pulled 340 kilos, which is roughly 750 pounds for the last deadlift of the day. And as a 83 kilo, 183 pound lifter, that is just ridiculous, especially with a stiff Eleiko bar and competition plates. And it prompted, some of the athletes that I work with, some of these feats of strength, it prompted them to say, how is that possible? Or, will I ever get there one day? And this is a tough question to be asked when you're, the coach of somebody, because on the one hand, you need to be intellectually honest, and on the other hand, you have to do so in a way that is not discouraging. And I figured if I'm going to invest the time in answering that question in a respectful, thoughtful, and yet educational way, why not make an entire video on it? Because it's something that a lot of people are wondering about. Now, I don't pretend to have the sole truth on this topic, obviously, and a lot of this is just my opinion, but hey, you guys are here because you want my opinion on things. So, one of the first concepts that you have to understand when it comes to the eventual selection of champions is something called participation. Now, a lot of you already know what participation means, but participation in the broader context of sport and really in life comes down to how many people are competing for the same thing. So, some examples here might include something like, as far as mating goes, the participation rate is almost 100%. So, the most attractive people are going to be found at nearly a 100% rate by the world and rewarded for their attractiveness, since attractiveness is something that is universally participated in. Now, let's use a more relatable example, like sports. There are 4 major sports in the United States: football, baseball, basketball, and soccer, or also known as football in the entire rest of the world. Now, the thing is that pretty much every single child, not every single one, but very close, and almost certainly every child that attends a public school will at some point in their life participate in these major sports, whether that's through a physical education class or playing at recess, like impromptu backyard pickup games, or whether it's more formal, such as joining an actual Pee-wee league or Little League or what have you. Almost everybody will participate in these sports. And what that means is that there is a huge selection funnel. And what's important to understand about this is that when the participation rates are that high and the selection funnel is that large, you are going to select the outliers at an extremely high rate. I read a statistic recently that 25% of all men over 7 feet tall have played professional basketball. And that is, again, because the selection funnel is so big. They find these people, they recruit these people are introduced to basketball at some point or another, because let's face it, if you are a successful basketball star, you are now a multi-millionaire. And when the rewards are that high, the participation is going to increase as well. Now, the reason why this is important is that in sports, talent is generally distributed along a normal bell curve with extended tails. And what that means is that the outliers are freakish outliers. That tends to be how it works. I first read about this, I believe, in a book called The Sports Gene, but I think Greg Nuckols recently put an article out about it, and that's why I'm remembering it now. But someone can fact check me on that. But anyway, because of this reality of distribution of talent, and because when you get into sports situations where rewards grow and thus participation increases, you get a much higher rate of selection in terms of finding these outliers. And it eventually gets to the point where only outliers can make it to the highest levels. And this is why in the National Football League, which is essentially the most popular sport in the United States right now, I don't think that's even debatable anymore. The 1 in 1 million children who play the sport growing up will make it to the NFL. And that's very different than, say, becoming the powerlifting world champion, because in the NFL, there are, I believe, 30 or 32 teams, and each team has a 52-man roster, meaning that there's something like 1,500 professional football players at any given time in the National Football League. And 1 in 1 million children who play this sport growing up eventually get into a pro league like the NFL. That is ridiculous if you think about it. How many people are doing it and yet are not good enough? And it gets to a point where when a selection funnel is that big, that genetics are just so important. And powerlifting is further, this genetic capability thing is further compounded by the fact that there's almost no skill in powerlifting. There's no offense, there's no defense, there's very little strategy. You can't really influence your opponent directly. There's absolutely no way to do that other than like cheating. Like, if you sabotage them in the warm-up room or something. But there's no direct way to influence what your opponent does. You can play mind games by putting in tricky attempts and stuff like that, but ultimately there's nothing really you can do to influence your opponent. And yes, sure, there's mobility elements to powerlifting, like having a great bench arch or being able to get into a really upright sumo position. But for the most part, the sport is all about strength. It's all about force production. Who has the most muscle and who can produce the most force with that muscle. And because the sport is almost a single attribute sport, there's less room for work ethic to help you go to the next level. Consider something like, say, mixed martial arts, where there's numerous disciplines within each discipline. So, for example, we could broadly divide mixed martial arts into striking and grappling. But within striking, there's punching, there's kicking, there's elbows, there's knees. Within grappling, there's wrestling from the feet, and then there's a submission grappling once everything is settled on the ground, like via jiu-jitsu and catch wrestling. But there's so many components of skill involved. In powerlifting, it's I'm not saying there's no skill in squat, bench, and deadlift, but it's low. It's low skill. And because of this, it comes down to this almost singular genetic predisposition towards being able to produce large amounts of force. And as the participation rate grows in powerlifting, which it is doing, because yes, it's true that really only the US Open provides significant prize money, which if you didn't know, they offered $40,000 to the first place winner this year. But people can still make a living from powerlifting via ebooks. If you're a great lifter, people will want to buy your ebook to see how you train, via offering personalized coaching services, doing seminars, selling t-shirts, or just maybe having a really popular YouTube fitness channel and making money off of the ads. People can legitimately live off of this if they're good enough now. To use Russell Orhii as an example again, he makes his living solely from his social media lifting stuff. So anytime that you offer somebody an avenue to, an above middle class lifestyle, especially one where you don't have to grind through the 9 to 5 and you can do something that you're passionate about instead, there's going to be extreme competition for those rewards. And I think that the popularity of powerlifting and the surge in participation rates is due, at least in part, to the increasing rewards that have been attached to the sport. So with those increasing rewards, with that increasing participation, means that we're going to find more and more freaks. They're not necessarily going to be an increased rate of like freaks being created, but we're simply going to do a better job of finding them. We're going to find them more frequently than they did before. Just like in basketball, where in the 1960s there wasn't a single 7-footer, and in today's modern 2010 and beyond leagues, 25% of all men over 7 feet tall have played professional basketball. Powerlifting is going to go down a similar road if the rewards continue to increase. And what that means is that we're going to do a better job of finding the genetic freaks that are out there. And once we get better and better and have a bigger selection funnel to find these freaks, it's going to be increasingly impossible to compete with these people unless you are one of them. That's all I want to say in part 1 of this video. In part 2 of this video, I'm going to cover how being elite and being a advanced athlete are actually two separate things. It's very hard for most people to understand this. And I want to cover as well, what's my point in talking about all of this? Where is the part that isn't discouraging, basically? But like I said, I have to split this up into 2 videos because I don't want to post a 30-minute video or something like that. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed part 1. Let me know if you're looking forward to part 2. As always, my friends, have a great day and good luck with your training. Peace.